Some of the key assumptions that we make with NVC. First one, we make an assumption that all human beings have the same needs. Not just the people that I like. Not just the people I get along with. Not just the politicians whose opinions align with mine. Not just my children when they're well behaved. But all people, all the time, have the same human needs. And we expand that, making another assumption that all of our actions, all human actions are attempts to meet needs. These two, for me, are the basis for making peace. Because when I don't recognize the humanity of the other person, I am essentially at war with them. If I'm struggling with you, if I am mystified by your actions, I don't really have a way to connect with you. The understanding that you have the same needs that I do is the beginning of the bridge to connection. The understanding that your behavior, no matter how abhorrent to me, your behavior is some attempt to meet a need, is the bridge that I can cross to recognizing your full humanity. I might not agree with your action. I'm certainly not suggesting that we therefore condone all actions, but I can understand the need behind it and orient myself around that need instead of around the behavior. That shift alone, if we're able to make that, in fact, if that's what you take out of today, I will feel very satisfied. Of course, how to apply that is the question. How to apply that. But that particular principle allows us to bridge a lot of gaps in behavior with our children. As best I can tell, a lot of our struggles come from really just not understanding where the behavior is coming from. Why is it there? And therefore, what to do about it. Okay, now continuing, another, actually I'll share what this beyond right and wrong, good and bad means to me, is that when we understand that there's a need behind the behavior, then we can release the focus on judging the behavior, whether positively or negatively. As soon as we release the position of being judged, we have the possibility of authentic connection. Another assumption is that everyone's needs matter. And this seems so obvious, doesn't it? But in the heat of the moment, it doesn't seem so obvious. In the heat of the moment, most of us are focused either on our own needs or on the needs of the other person. And it's very hard for us to hold both as mattering. In this culture, our orientation is that adults' needs matter more than children's needs. That doesn't mean that's what's happening in your family, because in many families, we make the children's needs matter and we relinquish our own. But overall in the culture, the adults' needs matter. So this is one opportunity to look. Where am I standing on this question? Am I making my children's needs matter and relinquishing mine? Or am I making my needs matter and not attending to my children's? In either way that we lean, NVC can help us find the balance, come back to balance. Another assumption that we make is that we can have full self-responsibility for our feelings and for our actions. It's a particularly exciting part of NVC for many people because it really is a path for liberation, a path for a deep and profound empowerment, both for ourselves and for young children. And we'll talk more about what this actually means a little later in the workshop. And the last one that I want to highlight is the joy of giving. This is a very sweet assumption. We make the assumption that human beings inherently enjoy giving to one another. They inherently delight in contributing to one another. And this is a guiding principle that helps us shift from trying to make children do things to inviting them to do things, which is a very different way for the children to hear what we would like from them. We're going to spend time with each of these, but I want to share with you one story that highlights a lot of them for me, from my own life. When my son was about 3 1/4, his grandparents were staying in the room downstairs from the kitchen. And it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and he's banging a pole on the ground. Now, in this parenting paradigm that we live in this culture, what am I supposed to do? Stop him, right? We all know that. Isn't that interesting? We all know exactly what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to stop him. Now, luckily, I had NVC training before this moment. So at this moment, what I did was applied all of what I am aware of. And I turned to him and I said, I'm concerned about your grandparents. I'd really like them to be able to rest as long as they would like. Would you be willing to stop banging or to bang on the couch? And he said, I don't want to, but I'm willing. I said, how come you don't want to? And he said, it's not waking me up. And this is the self-interest that all of us have. All of us have our own needs that matter to us. It's not waking him up. It's meeting his needs. Why would he want to stop? So then I asked him, so how come you're willing? And he said, because I want to consider you. So this is the other side. This is kind of a picture of interdependence, where our own needs matter to us, but other people's needs really matter to us too. And we can swing, swim, dance, whatever image works for you, between the poles of self-care and self-concern and other care and other concern. This is a dynamic movement. Now, do you think that he could have had that motivation of wanting to do it out of consideration for me if he had any suspicion that I might grab the pole out of his hand? What do you think? I don't think so. I don't think so. Because when we fear that somebody will have some consequence for our action, or that there will be force to enforce the request, then our hearts shut down. Then we don't want to give from the joy of our hearts. We give out of a whole set of other reasons. Again, we'll look at that a little bit later. So I like this story because for me it highlights all of these principles. All of us have a need for rest. All of us have a need for play. All of us have a need for consideration and care. All of us have a need for self-care. All of those needs are at play in our interaction. All of our actions are attempts to meet needs. I'm aware of what his needs are. I'm not judging the behavior. I'm aware that he's wanting play and engagement. Everyone's needs matter. Not just mine and not just the grandparents. See, I'm supposed to grab the pole not out of my needs, but out of the care for the grandparents. So his needs matter too. I want something that really supports his needs, not just other people's needs. He did. Yeah. He was willing.
But he was willing, yeah.
He did. And the self-responsibility, I was not blaming him for what was going on for me. You're making me angry. That's kind of the way that we orient our words a lot of times. No, I was taking responsibility for my feelings and my needs, my concern, my desire for consideration of the grandparents. And lastly, the joy of natural giving is that delight with which he was willing. He wasn't resentful, he wasn't angry, he was just delighted to contribute to me out of care and consideration. So all of I like how that particular story really weaves these principles together. Now, it doesn't mean that he would always be willing, and that's a whole other question. What do we do if he says no? And that's, again, in the second half of today, we're going to work specifically with the dynamic that happens around no. So I'm guessing everybody faces that one. I'm sorry?
Not everyone.
Everyone's nodding. Okay, so let's take a look for a moment at the different habits that we have. And this is how we hear things, and it's very relevant to a lot of what is not quite working here. The slides keep sliding. I think what I need... So when we hear something that's challenging, and all of you have hopefully shared something that was... Anybody not find a challenge, by the way? Okay, so you all shared something that's a challenge in your life with your child or other people's children. So part of the challenge is really, before we even address what's going on around us, it's about what we're doing with what's going on. And I want to share with you what my sense is of our habits. I'm going to use one of my assistants here. We use the jackal to describe, to represent the language of our habits. Not wrong, not bad, just what our habits tend to be. And our habits, for many of us, tend to be habits of judgment and demand. So let me describe to you how that goes. Would somebody throw out, what are some of the most challenging, specific sentences that you hear from your child directed to you? Shut up. Okay, what else? Anybody got bad mommy or bad daddy yet? You're mean. My mommy doesn't love me. I don't want to. That's enough, isn't it? Okay, so let's take shut up for a moment, just as a blatant kind of thing that we might understandably have a reaction to. And with the habits of judgments, we tend to have two orientations. We might judge ourselves, or we might judge the other person. So let's see what each of those looks like. Would you be willing to just call out the phrase to me, and then I'll respond with the jackal ears turned in, which is the habit of self-judgment. Oh my God, such a horrible mother. What did I do that my child is talking this way? I know I failed. I'm completely a miserable failure, and I have no idea how to respond. I know everybody in my neighborhood would be able to know what to do, but not me. I'm just a total failure. Is that familiar? Maybe not the exact words, but anybody ever felt them? Okay. So this is a particular habit many of us experience. Some of us experience this one. Shut up. What a jerk. How dare he speak like that? A spoiled brat. Who does he think he is? What kind of adult is he going to grow up to be? Anybody ever experienced this? Okay. All right. So this is again, a habit. Just a habit. There's nothing bad or wrong about it. It's a habit. The trouble with this habit is that when we have our jackal ears out, how do we end up tending to feel? Horrible. Horrible. Angry. How about the jackal ears in? Depressed. Horrible. Depressed. So we basically have the options, the habitual options of anger and depression. Yeah, nothing wrong with it, but I'd rather have a different reality. So some of us swing back and forth. I don't know about you. You're bad, I'm bad. You're wrong, I'm wrong. You're inappropriate, I'm inappropriate. Anger, depression, anger, depression, anger, depression. That's a good thing. But other than that, not very enjoyable. So we want to have a different habit. Just to highlight, in case I like to... Okay, so these are the two habits we just highlighted. We've got it's a hyena really, but we're going to pretend it's a jackal. Either laughing at oneself or at others, or in complete tears at oneself or at others. And miserable looking giraffe. This is not a happy place for most of us. So, now with a very simple ear transplant, we can really make a huge difference in our lives. And this is the ear transplant representing the giraffe. The giraffe is the animal we use in teaching to represent the language of the heart. And what we mean by that is the language of feelings and needs. Instead of focusing on the judgments, it invites us to focus on what's going on inside us. So let me demonstrate what that looks like. Okay, and I'm demonstrating first with the giraffe ears internally, because this is really the ground to step into, from which all of our choices emerge. Wow. How am I feeling? Startled, shocked, disgusted. What am I needing? Oh, partly that I'm needing respect, and partly kindness and sweetness in my interactions with people. I'm also really puzzled. I'm totally baffled, actually, about this sentence and where it's coming from. I really wanted to understand it. I'm shifting essentially to focus on an internal heart process instead of the habit of the judgment. Let's take a look at the other option, which is the giraffe ears out. Now what I'm focusing on is just what might be going on for the other person. And you notice I'm not speaking to her. This is just my internal process. Wow. She's really upset about something. Let me shut up. I wonder if she's wanting some space. Maybe she's really wanting to be understood. Maybe she's needing trust. That she's really being heard. I don't know. But just in the process of asking the questions about the nature of her feelings and needs, I start to create the conditions in my heart that would allow me to connect with her. Any questions about these two processes? I'm going to work with them a lot today, not so much in the form of these, though I highly recommend them. Actually, they're wonderful to work with children. I've taken the giraffe out when I've been in dire straits and not had the wherewithal to know how to respond to my child, and let the giraffe do the talking for me. And it was very, very helpful. I'm really, really grateful to you. Might play with that a little bit later. Okay, so this is the habit that we're looking at here. Is connecting with ourselves or connecting with others. Very different habits. Now, in order to actually change a habit, we have got to have a sense of what to put in its place, don't we? I think that is one of the most difficult things about making a change, is that we don't have something to substitute. We know what we don't want. We don't know what we do want. So the rest of today is really about what we do want, finding a path to connect in the way that we do want, so we can begin to substitute any habits that we would like to transform without judging ourselves for them in the process. So I'm wondering if there's anybody who would be willing to invite us into a little role play of a situation in your life so we can practice a little bit of empathy skills.
Sure.
Okay? Tell us what the situation is.
I limit the amount of television my daughter watches, and she wants to watch more than I allow her to watch.
Okay. All right. So how about if you'll be your daughter?
Okay.
And we are going to be the mother. And we're all Carolyn. We're all Carolyn with the advantage of, one, not being in the moment triggered. And two, knowing that all that we're going to try to do is to connect with our daughter. We're not going to try to educate her. We're not going to try to convince her. We're not going to try to whatever her. We're just going to try to connect to understand what's going on. Okay, and you're just going to respond as best you can from her stance. Okay? So how does it begin? Let's see.
I want to watch Scooby-Doo.
Okay. So now, who would like to be the first mother? First Caroline.
No.
That's our habitual. And you know what that gets you, because what is a no? And no is a demand. And so what are our options when we have a demand? We have two options usually in this culture: submission or rebellion.
So you want me to respond?
No, we're not going to do a no, because that sets us off in a different direction from what I'm hoping for. In fact, we're gonna learn about taking no out of our vocabulary. Not that we don't have places where we have limits, but we're going to look at how to communicate them in a way that is much more likely to be heard.
You just want to empathize with her.
We're just going to empathize with her. We're going to have Tamara model it. Yeah.
Are you feeling tired and needing relaxation? No, I want to watch Scooby-Doo.
It's really fun to watch the show.
Just a little louder.
It's really fun. You really love watching the show.
Yes.
So fun.
Okay.
What do you like about Scooby-Doo?
Okay, I'm happy with the question, but it's a little bit different from empathy. We'll talk in a minute about where that question can fit in. But just empathy, we just got a couple of examples of it. You're just checking. What's she feeling? What's she needing? Because I'm opposed to her watching Scooby-Doo. So if I'm focused on Scooby-Doo as the strategy, I'm just going to not want her to do that. And that's where all my attention and energy are going to go. And in response to that, what are her options? Remember? Rebel or submit. And I'm not looking for submission for the reasons we outlined before, but I'm definitely also not looking for rebellion. In fact, neither submission nor rebellion are true freedom. They're reactive exercise of our will, but they're not actually authentic, free choice. So I want instead to look at how to connect with her. So that's all I'm going to do is make a question. Are you feeling something because you're needing something? That's the basic format in NVC. It ends up not even sounding so much like that. But in the beginning, I really like emphasizing these two elements, the feeling and the need, because it helps ground me in what helps me connect. That's what helps me open my heart, to understand her feelings and needs. Okay, any other very different guesses from what we've heard so far? Okay, let's have a couple of others, just for variety.
I'll throw it out there.
Yes.
I really struggling with this myself. Are you feeling? Are you feeling rebellious because you need to express yourself in a different way? And you're really just guessing, just like keep guessing.
Yes. If you're just guessing, I love that. Now, the thing about it is I want you to guess things that are non-interpretive. The reason is because if I'm guessing rebellious or defiant, it's going to raise my opposition. Isn't it?
Receiver, if you keep guessing, you're going to get irritated with just asking how you sad.
Right. How do you expand the vocabulary really to represent the whole range of
the first couple of questions? I'm pretty much going to put defiance in rebellion. Is my thought. That's just right.
Because that's what you're used to thinking about, or?
Well, that's usually the typical response. Is if you ask 3 or 4 questions, finally you're going to get a response of, I'm watching Scooby-Doo. It's just, right. You'd ask so many questions.
Right. So in a minute we're going to look at that. So right now I'm not suggesting that your practice be to ask question after question after question after question.
Good.
At all. What I'm suggesting is that I want us to have a sense that there is a diversity of possibilities for what we might ask. That's why I'm inviting us to do more.
So your question may be, are you bored, sweetie? Is there something else you want to do? Is there something else you want to do?
So you just guessed the feeling and the strategy. The need might be, are you wanting something that you're excited about doing? Some fun, some choice about what to do with your time. Really wanting some joy and pleasure, So you get the idea? I'm really guessing at that need behind where she's coming from with Scooby-Doo.
So here's one slightly different.
Yeah.
So, Carolyn, are you feeling a little bit lonely? And you'd like to have friends Scooby-Doo? Some needs for friendship and
okay, so that's another possibility. Maybe it's a need for connection even. Just wanting some connection with something, somebody. Okay, so we have it, yeah.
I was just thinking, how what I'm hearing is that with a 4-year-old, you've got an intention for them that's quite short. So they're going to just phase you out at some point. You ask you the question. But also just defining these feelings and thinking, the 4-year-olds that I work with aren't going to know what lonely means necessarily.
Okay, so
it's like the simplification and coming up with the vocabulary to describe feelings.
I would say 2 things. One is it depends on the child.
Yep.
Don't make the assumption based on the age. Don't make any assumption. Just try things out. If they don't understand, they'll usually tell you. So, what's lonely? Then you just increase their emotional intelligence, if you want to put a label on it. But you just they just got new vocabulary. That's fine. We don't have to just say things they understand, otherwise they're not going to be learning. We're always saying things they don't understand. All the time. That's how they're learning. So I'm okay with stretching the vocabulary. Now, it's also true that the need language in particular is very conceptual. So this is where I personally shift from the one-word need to the five-word need, or to something that is close to a need, but is not the strategy that I'm objecting to, so that I can connect with them and they can understand me. I'm sorry, just one more second. A lot of times just even naming the feeling is so connecting. And I don't even have to name the need. Right now we're just practicing both for your practice, not necessarily that it's exactly what you'll do at home. Yes, go ahead.
The example would be autonomy.
Yes, I usually say choice when I'm talking about autonomy. Yes.
Are you willing to enlighten? This will know so clearly what you want.
Yeah, cool. You see, it's like... So now comes the expression part. So we've just landed, we've connected, and now we're landing back to where our needs matter too. So if we're starting with self-empathy, yes, and we're connecting with ourselves, we're just exploring the option of empathy to connect with the other person. And now we want to learn about expressing what our needs are in a way that is more likely to be heard by the other person. It's not to get their compliance, it's to connect. Like everything with NVC, our intention with everything that we do is to connect, is to create the quality of connection that is needed in order for everybody's needs to have a chance to be met. For everybody to know that their needs matter. So now I want to consider what I want to express. So when we talk about expression in NVC, we're talking about 4 elements. And the first one is an observation. So an observation is, again, different from the common English usage, because in the common English usage, disrespectful is something we consider an observation. In NVC, we consider that an interpretation or a judgment. So what we're looking for is just the facts of what is going on in the best way that I can describe them. Just what I see or hear. Sometimes it's what I sense in my body. I'm observing what's going on in my body. So what do I see or hear? So let's take your situation. So what's the observation?
The child wants to watch Scooby.
Yeah, very simple. The child asked to watch Scooby-Doo. So then we have some feelings about that, right? Going back to the feelings. How do you feel about that? No, now as an adult. Anybody, all of us being you. How do you feel? The child asked to watch Scooby-Doo. How do you feel? Okay, let's look for you have some reaction to it, so there is something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal to me, but I guess I was speaking for most people who like, what's the big deal?
Oh, no, speak for you. If you do have a concern about it, then what's the feeling? Irritation?
Loss of power.
So, loss of power, again, it's a little bit more like the interpretation. What's the feeling of that if you're thinking you're losing power? Frustrated? Maybe alarmed? Concerned? Yeah? You can look at your sheets, by the way. This is not a test.
Annoyed.
Annoyed?
I'm going to say disappointed.
Okay, fine. So it's all
that you're concerned.
Alright, so just the concern is the feeling. So you've got a whole range of possible feelings. Then we link them to our need. And this is a radical step of self-responsibility. We're used to saying, I feel frustrated because you. I feel sad because you. I feel hurt because you. I feel disappointed because you. So, who are we holding responsible?
The other
The other person. If we're holding the other person responsible for our feelings, it does not meet my need for empowerment. It doesn't meet my need for hope that our needs could be met. Because if I'm hostage to the other person's actions, then I'm fully dependent on them to change before I can get any of my needs met. I'd like better than that for us. So we make the link in NVC between our feelings and our needs. So we're looking for what need of mine is not met. So if I'm concerned, what might be my need? Again, look at your list if you'd like. It's a really abbreviated list, so feel free to expand on it. Security, maybe? Well, security about what?
About
so that might be self-acceptance as a parent, or confidence about my skills. Yeah?
Could it be contribution? About something student contributes to
Sure.
what I want.
Sure. I really want to contribute to my child's well-being. I might want peace of mind about their well-being too.
Hope for the future.
Hope for their future. Anything else?
Ease.
Okay, so ease and connection, peace. So all of those might be my needs. So now I put those two together and that's part of what I'm expressing. Now, let's just take a look for a moment at what that looks like in our NVC language. So, this is what we might call classical NVC, or the classical giraffe, some people call it. It's not necessarily how we might end up speaking, but these are the elements that ground us in what it is that we really want to communicate. So, would somebody like to try putting these three together, and then we'll look at a request?
I feel sad.
So let's take a look for a moment. Did you notice that you started to say, I feel like, and then you self-adjusted to, I feel sad. What's the difference there is as soon as I say I feel like, I know I'm going to follow that with a thought. I feel like, what? What was going to come out?
Something appropriate.
So I'm guessing what you mean by inappropriate is it doesn't fit with this model. But it's not, it's certainly how we usually speak, so it's fine. It's fine. So I feel sad because now you want to do something different with her. What need would that meet? That's a strategy. Sure. So, because I'm wanting connection. Alright. So that would be the first 3 steps. When I hear you want to watch Scooby-Doo, I feel sad because I want to connect with you. Alright? That's very simple. Now, completely overwhelming unless we immediately narrow it down to a specific request. It's overwhelming because when we hear a human need and we think we have to meet it and we don't know how, then we feel overwhelmed. We might even not enjoy doing anything about it because it's so difficult to imagine what we could possibly do. So then we want to follow immediately with a request. So let's work on requests for a moment. So when we talk about requests in NVC, okay, actually let me ask you, what is the form of making a request in common English language? What are you supposed to say?
Please.
Please. Right. When I say please, does that mean it's a request? It means I'm being polite, right? It's what's considered polite. Now in NVC, we're actually aiming to make truly requests. That means we distinguish between request and demand. And we also distinguish between requests and vague wishes or non-doable requests. So we're looking for something that is so concrete, it's like an observation, where I'm letting you know exactly what I would like that would help contribute to meeting my needs. So let's try a few requests at the end of this. Any suggestions? Yeah.
Would you be willing to play with the gardens instead?
Okay, so that's a clear, doable request. Anything else?
Would you be willing to help me do the laundry? Would you be willing to help me maybe clean in the kitchen? We can have things in the board.
All right. Anything else? Any other doable requests you could make? This is a place where it's really helpful to have a wild imagination and to develop your imagination, to really look at how many possibilities there are for getting our needs met. So the more, yeah.
Would you be willing to play Scooby with me? You can be Scooby and I'll be Shaggy.
All right. So part of what Tammy's request does, and I want to highlight an element of making requests that's very important to me, which is that I want my request to hold within it both my needs and your needs as much as possible. If I'm responding to a situation where I'm pretty clear on what your needs are already because I just empathized with you, right? I want the request to include both of our needs. And since my guess, 9 times out of 10, for most human beings until they grow out of it, unfortunately, is that there's a need for play. I want to integrate that as much as I can. Even as a parent, even though I'm not officially your playmate, I'm actually a play buddy as a way to connect with you to have the quality of relationship that we want. The more things I can turn into play, even if it's making the cake or, doing the laundry or whatever, and suddenly instead of just doing the laundry, we're actually like washing the clothes from climbing the tallest mountain in the world, and we're washing them in the ocean now, and whatever. You just make it up into some big game, and suddenly it's so much more exciting. Ever notice that? That's like a whole other art. It's not what this workshop is about, but it's a whole other art to parenting. It's really being able to move into play together as we shift through stuff. So that particular strategy really integrates your need, your child's need for play as well, and for connection. The strategies of doing something together also help integrate the connection in there. It might not be play, maybe it would be play, doing something in the kitchen together. Okay, so you get the idea? All right.